that started right for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book Truthing, collection of essay, no other than Miss Randy B.
Oh,
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Randy. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
my name is Randi Bryant. I go by Randy B. I was a person who was in the change management, diversity, equity, and inclusion space for years. And through that process, I really did a lot of, I became to understand how hard it was for us to be and walk and live in our truths. So that's a journey I've guided people on, and that's what the book is about.
Miss Randy B, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And
Thank you.
and hoping for more and more empowering books to come. What what does the term truthing mean in the context of this collection?
It means being, living, walking my truth, truthing. It's actually a term I use throughout my entire career, talking about just, I think that we all have a hard time being who we truly are or who the universe wants us to be because we get all these outside messages that say, you have to look a certain way, you have to talk a certain way, you have to live a certain life. But I believe that our destiny is within us, who we are is within us. We're uniquely designed. And the real strength is when we have the audacity to embrace and be authentic, be our authentic selves. So I call that truthing, being and living our truths.
Very well said and beautifully articulated, Miss Randy. Very well said. So, how did you explore the relationship between personal truth and societal norms?
Well, just in living my life. And that's why this is a collection of essays. I try to tell people the truth about what I have been through on my own personal journey because, particularly as a person who was from a marginalized group, but mainly lived in spaces where I was the only. There was a time where I was in school with, went to church with, lived in a neighborhood where I was always alone, always the only. And so I felt that my difference made me wrong. And so I was always trying to blend in and fit in. But as we get older, as we mature, I think that we realize that it's really our differences that make us special. And also, you can't blend in when you're different. And so it's easier to really just embrace who you are, embrace your difference. And when you embrace your difference, one, it it kind of pushes the rest of the world to accept you because you've accepted yourself. But it also gives the people around you permission to be their authentic selves. If you look at who we love as movie stars or uh, musical stars, we like the people who are willing and who have the audacity and the courage to be themselves.
So, Miss Randy, in what ways does the book challenge the reader's perception of honesty and authenticity?
I believe that people think honesty is what you're saying to other people about day to day things. Like if someone asks you, did you pay your rent? Or, it's about showing up on time. But I believe that the first lies we tell are to ourselves. And if we're lying to ourselves, we lie to the rest of the world. So that is, I believe that as you see in the book, I tell essays about how I really was lying to myself. I mean, I remember I talk in the book about how I used to travel, and I remember the first solo trip I took, and I didn't even know what to. I went to the store because I stayed in an Airbnb, and I didn't even know what to buy in the store as far as what I would like to eat for my meals because I had never really paid attention to what I liked. I had never thought about what I would eat if I weren't serving and cooking for other people. At this point, I was a mother and a wife and all of that. So, I told myself I was happy. I told myself that I liked the same foods basically that I was cooking for everybody else. Just simple stuff like that. Where in reality, I had never really thought about what I liked. I'd never asked myself the questions, simple questions about myself. I just went with the flow and went with what society told me was right or the people around me told me was right.
So, Miss Randy, let's talk about voice and style of the book. How would you describe the voice across the essays? Raw, poetic, direct, and introspective.
Yes, actually, I would say direct and introspective. I speak candidly. I'm very honest, but I speak as if I'm talking to my best friend. It's conversational in style. It's I'm trying to develop a relationship between me and my reader. There's no distance with me trying to use the biggest words I know or trying to prove how intelligent I could possibly sound. It really is just a conversation between me and the reader and me sharing myself.
Totally agree, Ms. Randy. What makes the storytelling style engaging or unique for True Thing?
One that is the truth. I,
For
I yeah,
sure.
I believe that it's refreshing to be around people to hear someone's truth and to hear the honesty behind it. I believe that's why reality shows became so big, or when they were more realistic, or why social media in a lot of forms became big. At first, it was like this fake people showing their perfect lives, their perfect birthday parties, their perfect outfits and makeups and family lives, and that's interesting to an extent. But I think that we've
Yes.
seen in years we're becoming more attracted to people telling the honest, raw truth about, bad times and good times, the struggles they go through, the fears they're having, just being honest about their emotions and showing their humanity. I think that's
Which
what bonds
essays?
us.
Sorry. Go
No, I
ahead.
was, I was just going to say that's what bonds us is that regardless of where we're from or the lives we lead, we all still have and experience the same emotions. And so when you share those emotions, that's where connections come.
Totally. So, which essay stood out most to you stylistically and why?
Huh. That's a really good question. I believe that most of the essays I talk in my first person. I talk in first person, but there are a couple where I am talking as if I'm almost interviewing. Like there's one where I'm interviewing America, like I'm acting as if I'm in a relationship with America, like a romantic relationship, and I'm acting as a man in a relationship with America, and she's a woman, and where I'm questioning some of the issues that I have within that relationship.
Interesting indeed. And did you rely more on emotion, logic, or combination of both to convey the truth?
I am an emotional person, so I wrote from emotion and I edited with logic.
Awesome. So let's talk about the impact and personal reflection. Which essay resonated with you the most, and what would it felt personal or powerful?
I believe the essays where I'm telling a hard truth. I share some of the things, of course, when I've had people to pass away. Um, the things where I have had my heart broken, those, were hardest for me to write. I'm probably most inspired though by the essays where I'm really trying to tell people like it's going to be all right if we can make it through hard times. And I talk about some of the hard times that I've made it through. Um, but I think that what people would find the most engaging are the ones where I show my journey because these are essays over a period of time. So I am writing in real time of what's going on in my life, I'm writing my truth. So it's almost as if you have access to somebody's diary.
Miss Randy, did any of the essays challenge your belief or make you uncomfortable? Or and why?
All of the essays made me uncomfortable, every single one,
Why
because
is that?
I find it difficult to share who I am and the most vulnerable pieces of me. Um, I've just become honest about who I am. I've just discovered me. And so to take this information that I haven't completely become comfortable with yet, it's a journey. I'm still on the journey, but to share it with people and open myself up to judgment or ridicule, it made me uncomfortable. And I recognized that that is what I was doing. So yes, it's tough to do that. I like fiction writing. That's where my skill is, and I love to fiction write. This book is different. I also, the book before Truthing was a business book about inclusive language. It was a book related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we needed inclusive language. That book is called Never Says. Never Says, and Never Says did very well. It was a much easier book for me to write because it was rational. So I think it's either where it's my business mind, so it's a rational book. That was easy, or fiction where I'm talking about somebody else's life that I've created, lives in my head. But truthing is more so talking about my life and me. So that's really more challenging.
How did reading this collection influence your understanding of vulnerability?
Well, I don't know if reading it did this, but other people reading it and giving me feedback and how it impacted them and how it made them think about themselves and ask themselves some hard questions, to question if they were being authentic, to really make some decisions about living more authentically in their lives. It made me feel proud that I gave people the permission to do those things.
Certainly.
Also, it shows growth because, what you write at one time, by the time the book is published and things, you may think completely differently. So, sometimes I wish I could, I need an appendix, like, just so you know, as of today, I don't think this way anymore, or I feel better about this subject. But, that'll have to be truthing too.
Again, beautifully articulated, Miss Randy. Very well said. What role does memory play that shapes the truth in your book?
I'm sorry. So what role did my
What
memory?
role? Yes, your memory itself.
One thing, it's funny how my professional life and my personal life, of course, are intertwined. And so what I realize is, as I'm writing, and I'm writing about things that happened in my life that involved other people. And one thing that I do want to be clear about is it's my truth, right? And so, 10 people or 50 people or 100 people can experience the same situation, and there could be 100 truths. Everybody experienced the situation differently. So that was actually another part where I felt vulnerable, because I recognized that I know I'm expressing some incidents or talking about things that other people may see it completely differently, who were there with me, who experienced the same thing. And so it really, I believe, further um, it further strengthen the idea or the belief in me that everybody matters, everybody's experience matters, and what makes us close as people is if you try to show empathy and think about the other person's experience. So while I am expressing my experience, I really am aware that other people could have experienced things differently. I mean, there's people who have been, um, like, I made them bad guys in my story in a sense, but they may not have been a bad person. They may have thought about things differently, and I recognize that. And so, you know, as I read my own stories, it makes me realize, well, that's the way you saw it, and that's the way you saw it then. And how did other people see it? How could they have seen things differently?
Ms. Randy, how can personal essays like this encourage deeper self exploration?
Well, I believe that's why we talk about reflecting. I mean, right now, that is common that, we get advice, particularly as we deal with stress, to journal. We're always told to journal. Um, w- I believe sometimes as we're writing, we find the root of how we're really feeling. Sometimes, and as we're writing, we work through our emotions because we put those emotions out on paper instead of, you know, exploding on people, or being in situations where we cannot manage our emotions. When you write, you're provide and also you can look back on what you've written. You can think about, well, what do I really want out of life, or how was I really feeling then. You can, because sometimes we lose track, right? Life is so
Yes.
incredibly distracting. Things around us happen, and we forget what our goals are, what our desires are, how we're feeling at times. And so it's really good to have a place where you are journaling, even if you don't turn it into a book. But this was almost what this was for me, is like journaling through periods of time.
So let's talk about the context and broader connections of the book itself. How does truthing reflect or respond to current social, cultural, or political issues?
That's a really good question, particularly in today's political climate. You know, with my business and personally, I've always been a cheerleader for people being their authentic selves and living in their truths. So, at a time where I believe people are more scared to do this, um, and that it takes more courage than it ever has. I'm proud of the message. We're at a time, I just finished watching the news, which I don't do so much these days because I find it rather depressing, where I believe we have people who have immigrated to this country, that aren't feeling safe. What Even when they immigrated legally, you have people who are part of the LGBTQIA community. You have people who are of color or black. You have women. You have veterans. You have government employees. There are all sorts of people right now who are feeling incredibly uncomfortable, and as if who they are is wrong in some way, and they don't feel as safe. Even, people's religious freedoms, they're not feeling that they are seen as Americans. And that makes me very sad. And because in everything that I do, I'm really urging people to be the unique being that I believe this universe designed for them to be. And I believe that when people are not allowed to be who they are, or they feel they have to stifle it or muzzle it or cover it in some way, they are miserable and hurt and suffer. They are not healthy, and it can affect people mentally and emotionally. But studies have shown that it can also affect us physically. So I believe right now we are in a period that people are not feeling safe, and just safe to be themselves, and that is dangerous and sad.
Very well said, Ms. Randy. Very well said. In what ways did you address identity and how do they explore its complexity?
I talked about identity just because I'm writing from the viewpoint of a black woman who is just now coming into her own. It took me a long time to feel proud and open about even my blackness. And I know that may sound um, wild to some people, but within our community, there's a lot of code switching where we don't show who we are. And it's sad that when some people are who they are, some people consider it as something dangerous or threatening. And I'm solid in that who I am is not at all dangerous, not at all threatening, somebody I'm proud of. So I'm proud of who I am and don't feel the need to cover it up at all. Even being a woman, I talk about how I was in corporate America and I was probably 7.5 months pregnant before I allowed people to know that I was pregnant because I felt that, it was confirmation of my womanness and that I wouldn't be as, um, they wouldn't think that I was as strong of a candidate for promotion and moving up in corporate America. So yeah, I mean, I speak about how I come into my own identity and have gotten to a place where I am unapologetically who I am and invite people and encourage people to do the same.
True thing, are there any recurring symbols, images, or motif throughout the essays?
No, I don't believe so. But I do believe everything centers on truthing.
Awesome. So, how do the essay collectively shape a narrative about growth, resilience, and discovery?
You said, how do they?
Yes.
Well, talking about me and how I've grown, how I've been resilient, and how I've discovered who I am. My mother and I remember my mother and I laughing because the phrase, she's finding herself or he's finding herself, that would be a phrase that people would use. And we were like, well, are you lost? Like it was always like seems silly to us. But now it makes so much sense to me that we actually do need to find ourselves. We actually need to discover who we are because from birth, our parents tell us who we are. The people around us tell us who we are, from how we identify with our gender, our race, our religion, our where we live regionally. All of these things we're told about who we are, and so I believe who we are is unique to us, and it's within us. And so it's discovering that person, and it's a continuous discovery that I believe you live until the day that you transition. And it's really about being bold enough to embrace that person as you're discovering.
Totally agree, Miss
Yes.
Randy. So, what will be your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, I do want to write one more business book on DEI just because of what's happening politically. So Never Saves was my first business book. I would like to write a second. But fiction writing is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing in my retirement.
Looking forward for those books, Miss Randy, and thank you
Yeah.
so much
Thank you
for
so much.
your knowledge. So, what will be your advice for those people out there who want to write their own books?
Well, one I may say, I would say you may have already written it. If you're a person who writes regularly and you journal regularly, you may go through your stuff and say, well, you know what? I have a book here. Someone could be touched and affected and changed by what I've written. Um, Second, Nike did have the best slogan ever, just do it. Just do it. I kept waiting for the perfect time, or, I would get wrapped up in the words. Am I saying that right? It's just, get it out on paper because you can always edit, 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 and edit again.
Yes, people, just do it and stop procrastinating. People always procrastinating. I do it tomorrow, sooner or
Right,
later.
right. I was fascinating. Yes. The way I am with exercise. We got to just do it. And,
Yes.
and be honest with yourself. Like, right. I think the best writing, just like the best performances, are honest.
Honesty is the best policy, people. So
Yes.
before we wrap up our discussion, Miss Randy, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my audiobooks. People, audiobooks available on Audible for sure on my book 101 review, volume 3 suggestions, and volume 2 is selected, book 101 review volume 1 highly recommended. These are the products of my first season, people, first season of book 101 review. And of course, my self-help book, Threads of Existence, Weaving the Tapestry of Life. and stand tall, stand together, breaking the chains of bullying. And life is too short, a journey of discovery, fulfillment of joy. And of course, my climate change book, Earth, Fever, and Revealing Climate, and our race to restore balance. Please listen to them because one of the bestsellers on Audible. So, Miss Brandy, what do you think readers take away after finishing Truthing collection?
I hope they say, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be me, and me is enough. I am enough.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally, because God created us uniquely. Miss Randy B, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world.
Thank you for
So,
having me.
yes, and can you please invite our listeners to support all your books or upcoming projects as well as your business?
On Amazon, you can find the book Truthing. You can also find the book Never Says. And there's Truthing cards where I have these cards, 100 questions to start interesting conversations so you can learn your truth, more about your truth, and learn the truth of others.
Certainly, honesty is the best policy, people. Miss Brandy, please support her because if you support her, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Brandy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bodycom people, see you soon. So, Miss Randy, you are most welcome to come back.